Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Education Matters with Jim O'Connell. We're here on, let me see, May the 2nd, and we're live at 6 p.m. So, let me see, where are we? The call-in number here is 640-3091. You're very welcome to call in. That's 340-3091. I hope you're not hearing that sound. There's a whirring sound going on from one of the pieces of equipment here, but if it's bothering us, I know Kirsten will look after it for us. So, let's see. So as we start here for another week, there's always it's an exciting time again in Manchester. The vacation week has just finished, and everybody's back to school and heading into the final few weeks of school, really, because before we know it, it'll be all over for another year, and it's amazing how time flies, right? So we're here on May 2nd, and I think that we have I have the dates here for school finishing. And the last day of school for schools is June 14th. So is this where it was? Yeah. So I just had it here a second ago as we came on. So yeah. So the last day of school is. I have dates to remember. The coffee days. Let me see. On the school calendar, it's missing off my thing right now. So, my browser's not refreshing. Sorry, folks. So, let's go to. So, last day of school is coming up, and graduation will be is coming up as well on June 3rd for high schoolers. The times are 8 a.m. for MST, 10 a.m. for Central, 2 p.m. for West High, 6 p.m. for Memorial High School, and those are all at the SNAGU, or the former Verizon Centre in Manchester. So I also know that MCC has got its graduation coming up in a few weeks, as does SNU and I presume St. Anselm's and all the others as well. So it's an exciting time for people graduating from all those wonderful institutions. In our case, in the O'Connell family, our daughter will be coming home from college, so that's exciting for us, and she gets back in 2 weeks' time. And it's amazing how fast time goes. My daughter Molly and her friends, she's finishing her sophomore year, and it feels like yesterday that she headed out. So I often say this, and I'll say it again. Time just absolutely flies. So the series and a few other dates are that Dr. Vargas has been having these coffee and conversations with Dr. Vargas, that he's been having in various schools around the school district, and there are a couple coming up tomorrow, Wednesday. He's at Hallsville tomorrow morning at 7:30 on May 3rd. So if you're in the Hallsville area, and you don't have to be with the Hallsville school, I'm sure he'd be happy to see parents or teachers or interested citizens from any part of the city. But he'll be at Hallsville tomorrow morning at 7:30. That's May 3rd, and then in the afternoon on May 4th, that's Thursday, May 4th at 4:30 in the afternoon, Dr. Vargas will be at Central High School. So those are the last. There's only a couple of opportunities left in this academic year, and it's important, I think, if you if you have things to say, or if you just want to listen, you have questions to ask. This is certainly the place to do it. And it's been a very convivial and non-intimidating series of events. I've been at a few of them, and often the number of people there are quite small. It's usually intimate enough that it's around that particular school, and Dr. Vargas will explain usually whatever his thought of the day, so to speak, is, or the things that he's working upon, and then and he does make it clear, and rightfully so, I think, that he doesn't expect to reach solutions at these kind of meetings. These are opportunities for people to partake in in conversations back and forth, to ask questions of him, for him to learn some things from you, the parents, and also for parents to learn something from him. So. That's a good opportunity to do that whenever you have time. So once again, Hallsville tomorrow morning at 7:30, and Central High School at 4:30 on Thursday afternoon. We're going to take a quick break, folks, if we can, because there's something going wrong here with some of the equipment around me, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you. All right, that's a lot better. I don't know if you could hear that noise before we went off for a couple of seconds there, but there was a piece of equipment that was whining at a pitch that was just at that annoying level that you couldn't ignore it. So we fixed that because Kirsten, the producer here, is in charge of everything and knows how to fix everything. So thank you, Kirsten, for that. So we were just dealing with a few of the dates that are coming up and what's going on in the school district as far as dates for parents to be aware of. I think the big picture is that we're coming to the end of the school year. There are, whatever, 5 or 6 weeks left in total. Usually, with all due respects to everybody, and some might argue with that, the last week ends up being I won't say a garbage week, but maybe a tidy up week. It's not usual in my experience and the experience of my kids for heavy amounts of homework or projects to be issued to or required of students during those times. It's also an exciting time when I think about kids, down through the grades and kids moving, and it's a time of apprehension too, of course, for kids moving from 5th grade into 6th grade, moving from their grade schools to the middle schools, and then also from the middle schools into the high schools. And as I've said before, for parents and adults, that seems like we can even be thoughtless about that. That that's easy. It's just another. We've seen it happen 100 times. If you're a young man or a young woman of 12 or 13 about to head into high school for the first time, I think it's a pretty big deal. And certainly, everybody is sort of aware of the first day of school thing at kindergarten or or in first grade, but first day of middle school is also a big time too, because it's the first time you're away from Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones, the teacher, and in a school where there's where you're moving from class to class, etc. So I just think it's important for us as parents to be sort of cognizant of that and try and remember that life is not so simple for young people as we like to think it is sometimes. A few other things. I wish I had the full information on FIRST Robotics. As many of you will know, the high school teams, not West, sadly, but Memorial, Central, and MST, represented Manchester and the state of New Hampshire at the World Robotics Championships in St. Louis over recent days, finishing up on Sunday night, I believe. And they all did remarkably well. I don't have the full details in front of me. I know that according to a tiny piece in today's Union Leader, it mentions that Londonderry had gotten to fifth place in its group. As I understand it, the groups were in groups of 60 to 70 teams, and I know that Central was in the quarterfinals, so that would of its group, so that would imply last eight, and I know that I heard good, that MST had done good things as well. So hopefully for next week we'll have some details on that. But congratulations to all the students who first of all earned the right to go and represent Manchester and the state of New Hampshire at St. Louis, and to their teachers and the people who've worked with them. And many of these teams have worked on robotics for multiple years. And I can tell you, because of just some things that I know that are going on right now, many of these robotics teams are being the instruction level or the management level of them, or the parents who are enabling them. It's a very thin group, and so anybody listening to this show who's got capabilities in terms of computing or engineering or any of the STEM areas, that they should look for opportunities to volunteer, because it happens that some of our middle school programs drop out from time to time because they don't have a parent who's ready to do it. And other times what happens is a parent will stay with it for the years that their kid is there, and then once their kid moves on, then they move on too. Now, luckily in Manchester we have some educators and some parents who have stayed with these programs for a long time, well after their kids have moved out of the school system, and they're to be commended for it. But I go back to again this idea that all of these things rely on the very they're quite tenuous in some ways, but they're very important in the value that they bring to students. And when I talk to some of the students who are coming out of those programs and heading into, I know a few of the kids right now are going into schools like, all over the place, various engineering schools, and technical institutes around the country, Rensselaer or Rochester Institute of Technology, Worcester Polytechnic. One good friend of mine, his son is going to the engineering department at the University of New Hampshire, and so it's just wonderful to see. And clearly, and we'll be talking about this in a minute, in the state of New Hampshire in particular, but in the United States more generally, we are deeply in need of students taking up science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's important that we simply need more and more students in that area. So one of the other thing is just tonight, Tuesday afternoon, at 5:30, the teams from who were at DECA representing our schools out in Anaheim, California for the last 9 or 10 days or 8 or 9 days have just arrived back in the state. I don't have the details either of how well they did, but that was a large international conference, and we had students from some of our schools out there. So congratulations to them, and welcome back, and back with the bringing into the fire of getting ready for exams and tests and end of school stuff. Last thing I want to say in terms of these sort of housekeeping pieces is I'd like to congratulate our Assistant Superintendent Dave Ryan, who it was announced that he's going to be the co-superintendent of schools in I've forgotten exactly where, but Pembroke, Allenstown, that area, I believe. I'm not sure if it's on. It's not on the city's website, but anyway, congratulations to him, and I wish him well. And hopefully we'll see what will happen with regard to a new assistant superintendent. There's a kind of a greyness right now about what the school district is doing and what the city is doing with regard to the school budget. We don't know where we are exactly. There's silence on it. I asked the mayor recently. What he thought about a timeline, when he thought we'd have some clarity on the budget, about where we are with the city, and he told me that he didn't have any clearer view than I had from just what he said. If you're watching the meetings, we just don't know right now when the decision will be made. And in fairness to him, it is up to and any one member of the board of mayor and aldermen could propose a budget. At tonight's meeting, for instance, there was a meeting tonight, Tuesday, at City Hall at 7 o'clock. I don't believe it's going to happen, but it could happen at any time. But as the time goes on, the opportunities for change become less, because certain things, dates go by, and then it's too late to make certain changes. But no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, this is a pretty tough one, because the school district requires $170 million to retain its current services at the level that they're at right now. And the mayor's budget, the tax cap budget, is proposing $165 million. That will involve $5 million in cuts, and the cuts will be both in programs and in teachers and in administrators. Right now, there are various numbers out there, something in the 45 to 50 number. The one that I hear most often is 49. But that would be a huge hit to the school district. Again, if anybody would like to call in at any time, it's 640-3091. I spent a bit of time. I did go and get the enrollment numbers, and I spoke about them briefly last week. But what I did in the meantime, these enrollment numbers are from a week ago, and we got bogged down with a caller who was, and I don't mean to be argumentative with people, but I did check since, and he was factually incorrect as I thought at the time in his assertion, but about the numbers and how they should be dealt with. And I was making the point that when you look at the numbers in our schools, you'll have a class of kids, because of some self-contained program for kids with a particular need, and in a class you'll have 8 kids from say 3rd grade who because of their particular requirements are separated from those the rest of the mainstreamed students, and then you have, let's say, 230s. Well, some people would have it that you would take the 230s plus the 8 to give you 68, and you'd say that's now 3 classes, and it looks like you've got 22 or 23 kids per class. Whereas in actual fact, you have 2 30s and an 8. So all I've done here for these numbers is to get rid of the extraneous numbers. If there's a class, and in middle school or in grade school, it's very easy, because the argument can be made at high school that you could have a class of 8 kids who are taking advanced applied mathematics, and then the argument can be, well, can we afford to run a course with only 8 kids in it? And I understand that, and we could discuss this. I'm talking about a much more easy thing for everybody to understand. Also a thing that is not deniable, because it's very clear what the numbers show us, and very quickly. And there's something here for everybody, because it deals with every school district, or every school in the grade school in the city. So I'm going to be very quick. But I want to tell you that at Bakersfield Elementary School, when you run the numbers across all grades, it looks there's a problem at kindergarten, because at kindergarten you have a 23, a 16, and a 23, and 23 kids in a kindergarten class, most people would agree is not right. But I'm going to push that to one side, as with the pre-K, because there are 85 kids in the pre-K classes, and it's impossible to see how they're divided up looking at these sheets. So I don't want to confuse you talking about that, but I know that there are issues around PK and pre-K, and we might get to those in a minute. But at Bakersville, when we look through the grades, it seems very reasonable at the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. We get to we get to the fourth grade and we have a 28 class and a 29 class. And all that's happened there, ladies and gentlemen, is we've removed a teacher. So in first grade, we have 3 teachers. In second grade, we have 3 teachers. In third grade, we have 3 teachers. We get to fourth grade, and we've pulled out a teacher because we can't afford a teacher. This is from the cuts prior to us getting rid of the next 50. We need $170 million, $5 million more than what the Mayor Gatsis is proposing to maintain these numbers. So we have a 28 and a 29 class, 2 classes at Bakersville of 28 and 29. And we should have an additional teacher there to give us 3 classes of 19. That would be the right way for us to have good academic outcomes. By the way, the schools are listed alphabetically, so I'm not dealing it by geographically, but alphabetically. The next one that comes up is Beach Street, and we have a bunch of 20, 21 classes in kindergarten. Again, I'm going to push those to one side because I don't want to deal with kindergarten at this point. But in third grade, we have a 28, a 29, and a 29. Now, those 3 classes, if we added a teacher there, we'd have 2 22s and 2 21s, which I think would be, it's very obvious. Any normal school district, when it has, 29, 29, and 28 in 3 classes in third grade, they would simply say, we need another teacher, and before anybody else arrives during the year, because as you know, it's transient, and there's a lot of mobility, and there could be 2 kids arrive and 2 leave, so you'd end up with 2 22s and 2 21s. So an extra teacher is obviously needed there in third grade at Beach Street. In fourth grade at Beach Street, you have a 29, a 28, and a 27. You need an extra teacher there, which would give you 4 classes of 21. And the same thing happens again when you get to fifth grade. You have a 30, a 30, and a 28. If you added a teacher there, you'd have 4 22s. 30, 30, and 28 is simply, those numbers are not manageable. Kids coming out of that fifth grade class in Beach Street School, in any school in America, let alone Beach Street School, could not be getting the education that they deserve coming out of those class sizes, regardless of what people may think. It's not going to happen. And so, and then handing them up, people talk about the system and handing them on to the next grades, they're arriving into middle school, having come out of a class of 30. What hope do they have? Any kid who's on the cusp, any kid who might need an extra word or an extra help is not getting it in that environment. And frankly, I don't know how teachers can put in a solid 5 days a week, week after week after week, working in that environment either. It's very challenging. So when I look at Beach Street School, it seems to me that an additional teacher right now is required in third, fourth, and fifth grade. Now, under the proposed cuts in the city, ladies and gentlemen, of 50 teachers, we have 22 schools. If those 50 teachers were to be cut, let's call it 44 to make it easy, that's 2 teachers per school. So instead of getting the additional 3 teachers that Beach Street requires, they would lose 2 more teachers. And you should see what that will do. Now you'll have classes in the first and second grade. Right now, the second grade has got a 22, 25, 23, 23, and 23, which is 120 kids in second grade. If they were to lose a teacher there, they'll have exactly 4 classes of 30 in second grade. That's one of the teachers. And then, so we're going to blow well out over the 30s once we start eliminating people. Next one, Goslar Park. In Goslar Park, this is a very obvious one, because in Goslar Park, we're okay till we get to fifth grade. In fifth grade, we've got a 29 and a 27. And the reason for that is because the numbers are roughly the same. They go down a little bit as the grades go up at Goslar Park. They go down quite a bit, actually. They run from 87 to 82, 68, 59. But we go from 4 teachers in first grade, 4 teachers in second grade, 3 teachers in third grade, 3 teachers in fourth grade, and only 2 teachers in fifth grade. Clearly, 29 and 27 is too high. You add a teacher in there, it gives you 3 19s. Is what you would have. So I count that there's 1 needed there. Moving on to Green Acres. Again, I don't want to talk about Green Acres, about kindergarten, but at kindergarten we've got 25, 25, and 21. Let's go to the other grades. Again, at second grade at Green Acres, we have a 21, an 18, a 19, and a 20, which is perfectly reasonable. And what we do is we eliminate a teacher when we get to third grade. So now we have 3 30s at Green Acres. And parents listening to this and watching this, if you've got a third grader at Greenacres, a lovely school by anybody's account, it's just not right that there are 3 classes of 30. This is data from 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's 3 weeks ago, but it's within the last 3 weeks that this was a snapshot in time. 3 classes of 30 in third grade at Greenacres. If you added a teacher there in that grade, you'd have a 22, a 22, a 23, and a 23. Any normal school district would say, we can't have 3 classes of 30. We're going to hire a teacher and make those numbers 22, 22, 23, and 23. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, 22, 22, 23, and 23 is by no means any kind of happy holiday either. Trying to instill reading and writing and mathematics and science and social studies and the entire curriculum of third grade. Again, at Greenacre School, when we get to fourth grade, we've got 26, 25, and 26. Right at the top of the numbers right there, I would add a teacher there to make it 4 18s instead of the 3. And again, we get to fifth grade, and we have 4 classes in fifth grade because the numbers go up there, and we have a 26, 27, 26, and 27. If we added a teacher there, we'd have 5 classes of 21. I think when you can add a teacher and the average class size is 21, it's clear that the teacher should be added at that point. So when I look at Greenacres as it is right now, let alone lose 2 teachers, Greenacres requires 3 additional teachers, from my calculation, not including kindergarten. If we go to Hallsville, in the interest of time, let me just say, in Hallsville, on third grade, there are 2 classes, and the classes are 28 and 30. I would add a teacher there and make it 20, 19, and 19. The fourth grade is 24 and 23, and then there are 3 teachers in the fifth grade there, 19, 21, and 19. So the problem is that all those 3 classes, third, fourth, and fifth, should have the third class. We can only afford it in 1, and in this particular instance, we have it in the fifth grade. Because, for instance, there are 58 kids in third grade, 59 kids in fifth grade. We put 2 teachers in one and 3 in the other. That's because we haven't got enough teachers. So there's another teacher needed there. Let's go on to Henry Wilson. Henry Wilson School, the numbers are decent. We get to third grade, 26, 25, 26, 25, 23, 25 in fourth grade. Not the end of the world, I suppose, in Manchester's with a Manchester view. I think most people would view it a little differently. But just because of Manchester's figures, you take that 25, 25, and 25 in second grade at Henry Wilson, it's 75 kids, almost 80. I'd add a teacher that have 20 kids per class, but I'm not adding it in this case. When we get to fifth grade at Henry Wilson, we do get to a 27, a 28, and a 28. So clearly, if you added a teacher there, you'd have 4 classes of 20, and that teacher is needed there, I think. Highland Goffs Falls. When we get to, again, we drop a teacher. We have 4 teachers in first grade, 4 teachers in second grade. We get to third grade, we drop a teacher. The result is we cram what should be 4 22s, which is plenty big enough, plenty challenging enough for anybody. I've used the analogy before of, go have a birthday party for one of your, a third grader. So go and have a birthday party for a 10-year or 8-year-old in your house and invite 30 of them around and have them sitting inside in the middle of winter in your living room and have them there all day. And be there on your own without your husband or wife to help you out. And then picture that you're going to be there again tomorrow with the same 30 kids, and some of them will be sick, and some will be crying, some will be sad, some will be happy. Some of them are really good kids, some are not so good kids. Some learn very fast, some learn very slow. Some are from Manchester, some are from Yugoslavia or the former Yugoslav Republic, some are from Eritrea, some are from Virginia, and some are from Florida. Some have one mom and no dad. Some have a dad and no mom. Some, it goes on and on. So they're not the perfect 30 kids, like Stepford Wives. These are 30 kids from the real world with real issues who want to share with you all their joys and worries every day as they walk into school to meet Mrs. Jones. And Mrs. Jones instead is sitting there looking at 30 pairs of eyes looking up at her, and that's what Manchester does to its kids. So I would take Highlands Goss Falls, another wonderful school, and it's very clear to me that you would add a teacher there at third grade and you'd have 4 classes of 22. And believe me, you'd still have your hands full, either in a school class or back home in your house at the birthday party with 22 kids sitting in your living room all day. This is easy stuff, ladies and gentlemen. It shouldn't be that hard for us to, and we shouldn't have to fight. The citizens of Manchester shouldn't have to, be faced. This is what we're dealing with right now. We're not. I'm not projecting what's going to happen when we fire the 50 educators in a couple of months' time. I'm talking about what we're doing right now. Um, we go to Jewett Street School, and there's a large pre-K program there. I look at the kindergarten program; they got a 22 and a 23. We're going to leave those to one side because that's a separate topic for another day, I think. And uh, so, the nuances there are not always clear. So let me go on to in Jewett Street School. The numbers are pretty good in Jewett Street School. Of the schools in the city, numbers wise, it looks to me the numbers at Jewett. If you go up through the grades, the numbers are smaller actually. So they're in first grade is 225, second grade 21, 24, 25, third grade 25 and 26. In fourth grade we've got us 27 and 28. At that point we're getting up to that big number again. So. 27 and 28, that gives you 55 kids. So you'd have three 19s or two 19s and an 18, whatever it works out at, if you added a teacher there. So I haven't added one for Jewett Street School, but if I think the right thing to do would be to add one there. But I haven't included in the numbers because I want to, in fairness, let's say it's 27, 28. It's still tough doing, but just so you know that I'm not trying to make problems where they don't exist because we've got plenty already. McDonough School, again, third grade. Again, we do the same thing. In first grade, we've got 4 teachers. And we have classes of 22, 20, 21. And we get to second grade, we got 21, 20, 20, 20. 4 teachers. Now we get to third grade. We can't afford to keep another teacher. So what do? We get rid of a teacher. We take those 4 classes, turn them into 3 as they progress to the next level. And now we have a 28, 28, and 27. And if we hired a teacher, we'd have 4 21s. You go to the grade above that, and we have 26, 26, 26, and 25. If you added a teacher there, you'd have 5 classes of 21. And then when you get to the 5th grade at McDonough, you have 28, 25, and 26, which if you add a teacher would give you 4 classes of 20. So I look at McDonough School, it looks to me like there's a minimum requirement of 3 additional teachers there, let alone fire 2 that existed already. McDonough also has higher numbers for kindergarten at 20, 20, 20, 20, and 21. But again, we're not going to deal with that today. Northwest Elementary, as we move along through the alphabet. In third grade at Northwest Elementary, we have 29, 28, 29, and 30. I mean, come on, ladies and gentlemen, this is just not right. 29, 28, 29, and 30. That should be, in my worldview, I would add a teacher there and make it 5 23s. And then it would be comparable to the 4th grade class where it's 24, 22, 24, 24. But clearly 29, 28, 29, and 30 is not right doing right by the kids at Northwest Elementary. And again, we look at Northwest Elementary, the kindergarten numbers there are 25, 22, 23, 24, and 22. So let me just get rid of this buzzer here. We're having all kinds of buzzes today. All right, that's in Northwest Elementary. We have 5th grade. We have a 30, 28, 27, and 28. Again, you add a teacher, you'd have 5 classes of 23. We go on to Parker Varney. At Parker Varney School, we have in 3rd grade, we have 3 classes of 28, 28, and 26. You add a teacher, you got 4 21s. Some people would add this stuff and they would add a 5th teacher in there, and instead of having 4 21s, they'd have 5 16s. So, anyway, moving on from there, Parker Varney, as we look at the way the grades are divided up there, it's harder when you get up in the 4th because they're blending grades and things. It's a little harder to see exactly what's going on in Parker Varney. Parker Varney has a large PK program there. And there's a story around Parker Varney's pre-K where it's just... there's 183 kids as of a couple of weeks ago in pre-K there, and even though the numbers don't show it on the sheet, I know that there are 30 some kids in a pre-K class at Parker Varney. Now, albeit they have multiple because there are kids in there with special needs. They have multiple adults in the room, 4 or 5 adults in the room with 32 kids. But the 32 kids have all kinds of special needs, and that's why I don't want to spend too much time on kindergarten and pre-K, because there's a whole you know, I saw I know that a communication was issued by one public representative who described the situation there just in the last couple of weeks as unconscionable. That was the word that was used, or in good conscience. That's the feeling of some people about what's going on at the wonderful Park of Arnie. But that's down in pre-K. As we go up through the grades at Park of Arnie, I'm not dealing with Park of Arnie because the way they're blending classes there, so it's the numbers don't tell me really what's going on. I know that there is a significant problem that public representatives in the city are concerned about at Park of Arnie when it gets to pre-K and up into kindergarten. Smith Road. At Smith Road, the numbers look pretty decent at Smith Road. Again, Smith Road is a school designated for kids on the autism spectrum, so the numbers are harder to see here where they are. It looks to me when I look at fifth grade at Smith Road as a 26 and 27, but I just don't have it isn't clear from the data exactly where the requirements might be there. It seems to me that there aren't significant requirements there, but it's not clear. So I'm going to take a pass on that. When we get to Webster Elementary School, we again. When we're at first grade, there are 3 teachers in first grade, each teaching 25 kids. When we get to second grade there, we've got a 20 and 19 and 19 and 18. So we add a teacher in second grade, and so the 75 kids are divided by 4 instead of divided by 3. I mean, clearly, I would add a teacher at the first grade level because I think it's important that kids have as much educational opportunity as possible, as young as possible, and that would give you 4 19s at Webster School. What's more concerning at Webster School is the kindergarten's got 2 24s up there. So, but going on up to fourth grade, at fourth grade there's a 27, 28, and 28. So again, I don't see why you wouldn't add a teacher at Webster High School, at Webster Elementary School, and you'd have 4 classes of 21. It seems very obvious to me. And then Weston Elementary School is the last of the elementary schools. And when we get to Weston, again, there's a big number of kindergartners there. But let's go into the fourth grade. In fourth grade, we've got 29, 29, and 29. You add a teacher there, and you'd have 4 classes of 22, or whatever, 3 of 22 and 1 of 23. But clearly an additional teacher is needed there. And when you come to the end of all of that, ladies and gentlemen, that's 23 teachers that it looks to me like we need 23 additional teachers today in our grade schools in Manchester. And instead of our school board sitting and looking at this and saying, what is it that we're going to do about this shortage of teachers? We're actually considering firing another 50. So the sooner we can get to some conclusions on this, the better. I worry that people don't really know, or they don't really have the full knowledge of exactly what's going on in our schools and the level of dysfunctionality that happens due to numbers in some of our schools. The only other school I have, a middle school, is the Hillside Middle School, and I mentioned this last week, but again we got sidetracked on it when I spent some time talking to a caller. But we had a bit of a contretemps when I was president of the PTO at Hillside. And about 4 years ago, there came a time when there were 42 kids in a math class in 7th or 8th grade at Hillside, and 40 in another class. And the mayor said to me recently, Mayor Gatza said to me recently when we spoke about it, and he said his point was, what did we do? We went in and fixed it. That's a recreation of history. Yes, it was fixed. It was only fixed after it hit WMUR and television, and was carried on the evening news, and when it was on the front page of the Union Leader, and when newspapers outside of the state were taking an interest in what was happening in Manchester, it's then we fixed it. I don't deny that it was fixed, but it was fixed after the shouting started, not before. And people have said to me many times since, great job at Hillside. You people at Hillside did this. No, we didn't do anything that shouldn't have been done. We shouldn't be taking any praise for shouting about wrongness and things that are educationally unsound. So it's not about taking credit for having had those changes there. Those changes should never have gotten to the point where those changes needed to be made. And for those of you living in the Hillside area who are actually watching this, listen to this from 2 weeks ago. If you have a kid at Hillside right now in a math class, if you're in 7th grade, let me just find the ones that will jump off the page for you. 7th grade math, 32 kids, 30 kids. 7th grade science, 29, 29, 27. 7th grade math, 27. 7th grade math, 30. Language arts, 30 and 32. Math, 7th grade math, 29, 32. That's 32s and 30s I've called out for math or science in 7th grade at Hillside from last week. Another math class, 27. Let me find one here. Here's one. The algebra class. This is the only 8th grade one I'm going to quote, because 8th grade, I don't want. 7th grade is where there's a clear problem. But in 8th grade algebra at Hillside, right now today, 27 kids in an algebra class. Now let me tell you something. There are a lot more kids at Hillside Middle School who are capable of doing algebra and should be in an algebra class, but didn't make the cut. Not because they weren't academically capable of doing it, but because there was only one algebra class that was available, and because there's 32 and 30 and 29 and 28, they couldn't take a math class. Let's say the 27 that's in that algebra class, let's just for argument's sake say there were 10 other kids who should have been taking algebra at Hillside. That would have given them 37. So they would have had 2 classes of 18 and 19, and there weren't teachers there to do it. So there are kids in Hillside Middle School today who, in this current 8th grade, who do not have algebra, who should be having algebra. And then we go over into Central High School, and I don't have any numbers for Central High School except for this one. I know that my daughter, who's doing pre-calculus in her junior year at Central High School this year, has 31 kids in her class. That's pre-algebra at Central High School today. So imagine if you come through the chain from if you had the misfortune to be in the fourth and fifth class at Beach Street into the not so much 6th but the 7th and 8th grade classes at Hillside and on into Central High School, and your school career is going to be spent in a room full of 30 to 32 kids. That's Manchester today, and what our Board of Mayor and Aldermen are proposing to do, starting sometime in the next few weeks, is they're going to take that problem and they're going to remove 50 educators. They'll probably do something less. That's what's on the block right now. We'll be asked to accept that they're only going to get rid of 25. There are 25 retirees, and we'll probably be told, well, we're not going to fire anybody. Isn't that great, Jim? Let's all go out and have a beer after the meeting. It's going to be wonderful because we saved the day again. We didn't replace the 25 who were retiring, but the 32s are going to go to 34s, and let's talk about other stuff. Let's talk about some policy stuff. What worries me, ladies and gentlemen, is that the next item that's on the agenda, at the school board meeting, we have this feeder program that we're talking about, and now we're bringing in an outside consultant to, under the guise of right-sizing the district. We're going to look and see, about. I hear people talking about we've got too many buildings, and we've got, I'm like, I don't know where we get that from, because clearly if you had classes, if you're going to base your future of Manchester on having class sizes in the 30s, and not the 15 or 16s, then you need half the classes you would need at 15 and 16. If Manchester has some ambition in the next 25, 35, 40 or 50 years to get to a point where it has what every other school district has, class sizes of 17, 18 and 19, or 14, 15 and 16, then we need roughly twice the capacity that we have today in classes. Now, there's a lot of, when we fired 164 teachers and, okay, rehired 60 of them, but those 100 teachers net lost 4 years ago, and the many that have left since, have been fired since, or have left since, those classrooms notionally are sitting there. Now they've been reconfigured, they're used in different ways, etc. But I worry that we're going to bake in this horrible solution, that this horrible point in time that we find ourselves at in Manchester today. And when I talk about the math classes at middle school and math classes up at the high school, it just doesn't bear thinking about, because whatever about Manchester and its STEAM, I mean, it's wonderful that the mayor is married to his STEAM program, but STEAM means nothing. First of all, STEAM belongs in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. If not to be rude, but STEAM makes no sense. When you put arts into the middle of science, technology, engineering, and math, it sort of loses its laser focus. And we should be laser focused on science, technology, engineering, and math, not to the exclusion of the arts, because I'm a big fan of the arts, but we know that we have a dearth of students ready to take up STEM careers and to take them up in college. I don't want to go down this sidebar too much, but I hear people locally talking about more loudly recently about the need for tradespeople, and we need more tradespeople, and the implication is that perhaps we're overtraining people in our high schools and for college, which is just an absolute nonsense. There's no question, before anybody gets excited, there's no question that well-trained craftsmen and technicians and tradesmen are important, and that people can lead very excellent lives and very lucrative lives as a qualified tradesman. I'm not arguing at all that the whole world should be valued by how far up the college and graduate train they get. I'm not saying that at all, not even a whiff of that. Because clearly we need to be educating all our kids with all their capabilities, all their sets of interests. But as a society, we need students trained and ready at the highest levels to meet the challenges of the remainder of the 21st century. And it is a global world, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got to be ready for it. There's a guy, many of you will know this book, which is now quite dated, The World is Flat, but the most recent iteration of it, Tom Friedman wrote it in 2006, the third or fourth version. But in one of the chapters in it, he talks about the global economy. And my point here is that we're not competing, ladies and gentlemen, in Manchester, we're not competing with Nashua and Bedford and Candia, and we're not competing with Portsmouth or Keene, and we're not competing with Boston. We're competing with the world, and our students and our children are going into a marketplace that is a worldwide marketplace. And you can bury your head in the sand if you want, but I come from originally a little unimportant a country called Ireland, and I have a bunch of nephews and nieces back in Ireland who, just for whatever reason, some of them happen to be in the STEM fields, and Ireland turns out 65,000 technical graduates a year. And you drive around there and around its major cities, and it's wall to wall, high technology companies, etc. And those companies are not hiring carpenters. There is a place for carpenters. I'm not knocking carpenters. Please don't. I'm not trying to soften my words or anything. I think we should be producing good carpenters, good mechanics, good plumbers and good electricians, and we have to have them, and we should have them, and our schools should be able to turn them out. But I can tell you that what our country really needs and what our state really needs to differentiate itself, or not just to differentiate itself, to make it competitive and keep it competitive, is we need software engineers, we need electrical engineers, computer technicians, mathematicians. These are the, and scientists. These are the people that we need. Tom Friedman talks about, when he was writing this book, he talks about he used a Dell computer in order to in order to write the book on, and he says that that what he did was he approached Dell. He wrote the book on a Dell Inspiron. Back in the day, and he shared with Dell. He says, I shared with them, Dell, the ideas in the book, and in return I asked for one favor. I asked them to trace for me the entire global supply chain that assembled the pieces that built the laptop that wrote the book. And he even wanted to know the names of the people, or some of the people involved, the names of some of the people who put it together. So he goes on quite a ways here in his book about how it was done. But he says he paid for his computer. He ordered online. He paid for his computer online. His credit card was verified by Dell through his workflow connection with Visa. His order was then released at Dell's production system. Dell has 6 factories around the world. In Limerick, Ireland. It now has more than one in Ireland. There's one in Cork as well. Xiamen, China, El Dorado do Sul in Brazil, Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, and Penang, Malaysia. His order went out by email to the Dell notebook factory in Malaysia, where the parts for the computer were immediately ordered from the supplier logistics centres next to the Penang factory. Surrounding every Dell factory in the world are these parts of supplier logistics centres owned by different suppliers of Dell parts. These are like staging areas, and that's where the stuff they get ready to, right? So in an average day, they sell 140 to 150,000 computers. The orders come in over Dell.com or over the phone. Then he goes on to describe how the supply chain works. But so he goes on here. So where did the parts for my notebook come from? Now, when people talk about, recently we decided to put a 20% tariff on wood coming from Canada. The problem for the state of New Hampshire that Mr. Trump doesn't know about is that some lumber from New Hampshire is actually sent to Quebec, is milled in Quebec, and shipped back over. So what we've now done is by that process, we're taking U.S. originating timber and we're adding a 20% tariff to it, bringing it back over the border into the United States. And there are so many products that are developed nowadays on both sides of a border, like the Canadian border, or even borders around the world. And this illustrates the point right here. So where did the parts for my notebook computer come from? I asked Hunter to begin with. He said the notebook was co-designed in Austin, Texas, and in Taiwan by a team of Dell engineers and a team of Taiwanese notebook designers. The basic design of the motherboard and case the base functionality of your machine was designed to those specifications by an original design manufacturer in Taiwan. I'm trying to read through this quickly. So the partners do the base electronics. We know the customers better, etc., etc. It happened. My notebook order hit the Dell factory in Penang, which is in Malaysia. One part was not available, so it had to wait. And he's given the dates in here exactly how it all. So where did those parts come from? It says the Intel microprocessor came from an Intel factory either in the Philippines, Costa Rica, Malaysia, or China. The memory came from a Korean-owned factory in Korea, Samsung, a Taiwanese-owned factory in Taiwan, Nanya, a German-owned factory in Germany, Infineon, or a Japanese-owned factory in Japan, Elpida. The graphics card for his computer was shipped from either a Taiwanese-owned factory in China, MSI, or a Chinese-run factory in China, Foxconn. The cooling fan came from a Taiwanese-owned factory in Taiwan. The motherboard came from either Korea or Shanghai, or from a Taiwanese-owned factory in Shanghai, which is called Quanta, or a Taiwanese-owned factory in Taiwan. The keyboard came from either Japan, the Tianjin company, or China, or a company in Shenzhen, China. The LCD, the liquid crystal display, was made in either South Korea or by LG Philips, Japan, or in Japan by Toshiba. The wireless card came from either an American-owned factory in China, Agere is the name of the company, or Malaysia, Arrow, or a Taiwanese-owned factory in Taiwan, ASCII or Gemtech. The modem was made by either a Taiwanese-owned company in China or a Chinese-run company in China. The battery came from an American-owned company in Malaysia. or it could have come from the Japanese-owned factory in Mexico or in Malaysia and China, which is Sanyo. The hard disk drive was made by an American-owned factory in Singapore, that's Seagate, or a Japanese-owned company in Thailand, Hitachi or Fujitsu, or a Japanese-owned factory in the Philippines, Toshiba. The CD-DVD drive came from a South Korean-owned company with factories in Indonesia and the Philippines. The notebook carrying bag was made by either an Irish-owned company in China, Tenba, or an American-owned company in China, Targus Samsonite. The power adapter was made by either a Thai-owned factory in Thailand or a Taiwanese, Korean, or American-owned factory in China. The power cord was made by a British-owned company with factories in China, Malaysia, and India. That's Volex. The removable memory stick was made either by an Israeli-owned company in Israel, M Systems, or an American-owned company with a factory in Malaysia, Smart Modular. This supply chain symphony, from my order over the phone to production to delivery to my house, is one of the wonders of what he calls the flat world. And we could go on talking about this. This book is 10 years old, so there's nothing new about this. But that's the nature of the modern economy. There's no, those factories, those facilities, yes, they need plumbers to keep the water on, and they need craftsmen, and they need mechanics when the robots break down mechanically. But mostly what they need is software engineers and designers, scientists, and people with postgraduate degrees and graduate degrees. And we're here in Manchester turning out kids out of our schools. Pre-calculus at Central, 31 kids in a class. Algebra at Hillside with 27 kids in a class, and another 10 who should be taking algebra in their 8th grade and can't take it because we're too mean and cheap to hire a teacher. And we have 32, 32, 31, 31, 30, 30, 29, 29 in the math classes across the middle school. And in some of our schools, or most of our schools, as I've pointed out, it's almost impossible to go through the Manchester elementary school system without going through a class of 29 or 30. Ladies and gentlemen, this has to stop. It has real effects in the real world. We cannot be successful as a city, as a state, or as a country so long as we treat education this way. It's a very important topic. Get in there, get your shoulder to the wheel. Thank you for paying attention once again. Another show has come to an end, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.